Hello there. We're now continuing with our program on business letter writing. And in business letter writing, it's also important to know how to just write a very normal letter, a friendly letter as well. You may need to be writing to people regardless of certain business issues. In work, of course, people also become friends. And it's important just to have a very basic understanding of what's important in a friendly letter. So let's take a look at the purpose of a friendly letter. Why do we write friendly letters? A friendly letter is a way of communicating between two people who are usually well acquainted. So that means that you have some kind of relationship. You know each other fairly well, perhaps for some time. It could be that you get along reasonably well in functions or working together or any situation. And so therefore, you are at ease with the other person. There are many reasons why you might want to write to a friend. Many things happen in our lives or in our daily activities, and you may wish sometimes to write a letter to a friend for whatever those reasons are. It could be that somebody's been very, very ill and you want to send a letter to that friend to be able to explain how you feel and wishing them well. It could be that somebody just won an award for something and they're a friend of yours and you really want to send your well wishes off to them. Rather than sending a card, you would like to just write a letter to them as well. There are many reasons why we want to write friendly letters, and they usually are topics that are of a personal level. So friendly letters, they can either be printed, they can be typed and printed out, or they can be handwritten as well. It's very, very acceptable to handwrite a friendly letter. Usually the friendly letter is less formal than your standard business letter. That goes without saying. Actually, that's quite normal practice. And the first paragraph will consist of the introduction, which will let the recipient know why you're writing to them. Usually it will give a short summary of the main topic of your letter. And it can also convey a certain level of emotion that you are trying to convey as well. There might be a time where you don't really know the person that you're writing to, but they're not a business contact, but you still want to write a friendly letter. So you can still introduce yourself in that first paragraph. Remember, if you know the people, it's different. If you don't know the people, that also can happen as well, but it's not a formal business type letter. The next few paragraphs will usually consist of the message that you want to get across, along with the details that you are trying to convey as well. So this is our usual standard. Once you're into the practice of these particular guidelines, then you can see your first part is your introduction and why you're writing. Your next 2 or 3 paragraphs, if it is a lengthy letter, have the details of why you want to talk to each other and what you want to share with that person. And then finally, the last paragraph. This is where you wrap everything up. You sum up your main idea in this paragraph, thank them for their time, wish them well, and if there are any queries or anything that you want to let them know they can talk to you about, then this is the place to do it. So you have your beginning, you have your middle, so to speak, and you have your end. So it's good to remember that since friendly letters, and remember, these are not necessarily letters to a friend. They are just more friendly. Since friendly letters are less formal, you can actually write it in whichever style you may like to. But there are certain formats that are fairly common to follow, which will of course help you write that letter more easily so you don't stumble and you don't get into hot spots. This is a sample of the friendly letter format. As you can see, the address, return address line, month, day and year, the name of recipient, body paragraph 1, 2 and 3, and then your closing. So in a friendly letter format, you see that it is not straight flush to the left. That is more businesslike. This is more indented. They're indented to the right half of the page. And it's up to you how far that you want to indent the page, so long as you make sure that the heading and the closing is lined up. And when you look at it, make sure that it looks comfortable. It's not in bits and pieces all over the place. So try to indent your friendly letter. This is a more casual way of writing a letter as opposed to the business format. So the first line of each paragraph also is usually indented. This is so it appears that it's more of a narration than a series of facts and figures. And it, in some ways, is a little bit more comfortable and relaxed in its style. Let's look at point number 1 in the formatting of your friendly letter. If you have personal stationery, then you may have your name printed already and therefore you don't need to put your address details, etc. All you really do need to put is your street address on the first line and the city, the zip code, and so forth. There's no company name as such. Some people have personalized stationery where they put their name at the top or their husband's and their name at the top. It depends on the matter of style. Point number 2 in the format. Again, we can see that you put the month, the day and the year, and then skip a line until you come to the next part, which is the salutation. Now here, this normally starts out with dear so-and-so or hi. Because we are changing the tone of this letter, we are starting out with hi or hello. And there's no comma after the end. You can use, if you wish, an exclamation mark if there is a need for some emphasis. If you are perhaps delighted to see the other person, or if it's been some time since you've seen the other person and you just like to say, hi Peter, how are you? It's very informal, so please just use your own way as to how you approach that. Next, in the body. This is where you write your content. And again, single spacing between the lines, and then you can either skip 2 lines or 1 line if you wish, between one paragraph and the next. Then when you come to the final number of paragraphs, you can then come to the closing part. And here, this is where you let your reader know that you've finished with what you're saying and you end up with sincerely yours or thank you and so on. Here there is a comma after the end of the closing. So here you also put your signature to go in this section. Now here we also have a third part, a final part, which is called PS, Postscript. This means if you want to add anything additional to the letter, you write a PS and the message after that. This normally isn't a paragraph long, by the way, your PS. It's just meant to be something very, very brief. Maybe you want to accentuate something or put some additional information in here, and that's where you might add it. So this is the difference between the business formal format and the friendly letter format, a slight difference in the indentation and also the PS. So let's take a closer look at this friendly letter. This is written between friends. And here we can see that the indentation is there. It's quite different. but it is actually the standard way of writing an informal and a friendly letter. So let's look at the opening paragraph. The opening paragraph is where the writer says it seems like such a long time since we saw each other, even though it was only several weeks ago. So it's just a nice way of opening up and giving a caring feeling for the other person. Here in the second paragraph, the writer is just going through what she has been doing through these last weeks. Just a little bit of information about what she's doing on the beach, playing volleyball, surfing, building a nice collection of seashells, and being involved in a sand building contest. This is a little bit of fun between the two, just catching up on what has gone on in the last several weeks. On the weekdays I'm working, I drive an ice cream truck around and sell ice cream to the children. It's so cool. This is a young person obviously writing and using their very friendly terminology. It's talking a little bit about the job, but saying that he loves the job a lot. In the final closing part, he says, I hope the summer's going to do well for you, and there's only a little bit of time left for vacation, and then it's back to school. And closing, he says, would you mind, or would you like to meet up sometime before school starts? Your friend, signature, and then we have the PS. And this is just a little bit of an additional thing, and this is what is the difference in friendly letters. PS, John Austin says hi. So these are like little added-on notes. This is how the tone of a friendly letter usually does run. So as you can see, there is a difference. As you can see, the business format is quite formal, flush to the left, and the friendly letter format is indented with adding a PS. And of course, it's all first name terms, usually on first name terms. When you do have to add in surnames there, then it becomes a little less informal. It could still be friendly, but it is not as informal as this particular sample. Let's move on now to writing thank you notes. Have you ever written a thank you note, or do you just make a call? Or let me ask the next question. Do you write to say thank you or call to say thank you at all? That might be the case. Unfortunately, we do get a little bit lazy after we've been to events or parties and things, and it's not really the habit that we immediately send a thank you note. In some cultures, actually, it is a very standard way of behaving. It is an expected way of behaviour. For example, in England, where people do send thank you notes for things that they've attended, weddings, parties, dinners, those sorts of things. And it's a very nice idea to actually send a thank you note, a personalised note. It actually can elevate your sense of professionalism too. Even in a personal sense, it can really make the recipient feel really very good about the fact that they've got something from you after you've seen them at the event. This is just an add-on. This is, let's call it a bonus point to you and also to the recipient, because they feel good that you had a good time. Lots of people go away from functions. They may just nod their head and say goodbye at the function and say very politely they had a good time, and that's quite adequate. But if you want to do something more, and here I'm going to say if you want to go the extra mile, this is something that will really help work towards that. It will really make you look very, very good in the eyes of the recipient. So there are many reasons why we do write thank you notes. They can be written if you receive a gift. If you give help and you get help from a friend, you can thank them for that. for attendance at an important event perhaps, or for any occasion where you might feel that it's warranted, where it's necessary. It may not fall into all of these categories. There may be other things, and by all means, don't just feel you have to follow usual standards. Make your own standards. So thank you notes can be very, very special and extremely unique. A simple thank you, even when people say thank you, that shows appreciation, and there can be a lot of sincerity felt in that. So a simple thank you, whether it's verbal or written, shows real appreciation. And it will make the person you are thanking feel better. It will improve your image, as I have just mentioned, as being someone who is very grateful for something, as a kind of person who understands well all of the things that have gone on to put together an event. And by saying thank you, you really appreciate how hard perhaps the other side has worked to making that event successful. So this is really, really very important, and it can elevate your image in the eyes of the recipient extremely so. Let's take a look at thank you note writing. And to start it all off, thank you notes can be written on just about anything, but writing it on something very, very nice rather than just plain white paper or through an email will really add to the value and the presentation of your note. It will make it that much more special. You really will come across in a better light if you've gone to the time or taken the time to find out some very nice stationery, that can really make your thank you note look very, very special. Usually it is handwritten and it's on a card, and that will look more personalized and sincere rather than printing it off on the computer. Although sometimes we are in 2009, and if you've got lots and lots of thank you notes to write, you could have hundreds, then writing them all out by hand might be a bit difficult. So look at those logistics. So let's take a look at the thank you note. It can either be mailed as well or given in person, but don't delay this kind of thing. It's the same as an apology letter. Don't delay. It's the same with thank you letters. Don't delay. You can't attend an event and then 1 month later send a thank you note. That just doesn't make sense, and it would look very, very bad indeed on your part. So as soon as you have attended the event, the idea is usually within 2 weeks is acceptable in which you can send out that thank you letter. I would be more inclined to send it off within a week, because that means you have given time to think about it, you've absorbed it, and it's the right amount of time to send things off. Now, thank you notes are not complicated things, so don't think too much about complicating them. They are usually written simply, but they have thoughtful messages inside them. And these messages are thoughtful purely because you are writing to express your gratitude, your appreciation of something, of the party, or of the efforts of the hostess and host, for example. So the following is a very straightforward guideline that you can use when writing your thank you note. This isn't rocket science. This is just being genuinely appreciative of having attended something and just expressing your thoughts. And everybody can really learn how to do that. Start out your note by either using hello or dear, depending if it's a formal situation, but more often than not, you know the person quite well. So you could say, hello, Peter, for example. Or, dear Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Or, hi, Jane. Something like that. You could use a very informal greeting. then you would thank them. You should mention the gift that you got, or the party or the service that you got, and express your appreciation for it. Here we have an example that says, "Thank you for the new bike you bought me for my birthday. It's just what I wanted." So that's the very nice gesture of appreciation. Next, you can mention something you liked. Mention a specific thing about the gift or the service. For example, here we'll continue with the bike. The colour red fits the bike well. It's my favourite colour. So we have a simple specific about the particular gift. So here we can see it's, "Hello, Peter. Thank you for the new bike you bought me for my birthday. It's just what I wanted. The colour red fits the bike well. It's my favourite colour." In this first part of the thank you note, you are giving your expression of feelings, and it's becoming quite a warm and sincere and enthusiastic thank you note. Next, in the part of the thank you note, you can update the recipient. Update them on how it's affected you or what you're going to do with that particular gift or service. For example, you can say, "I plan on riding the bike around my neighbourhood every day right after school." So the recipient feels to themselves, we bought the right gift. That's great. He's happy. The next part of your note is where you add something personal. It doesn't have to be very, very long, remember, not too long, but it can just take the shape of, "I look forward to seeing you soon." That's a very nice personal note to add, and it's a comforting thing for the recipient to receive. And then we come to the final part where you thank them again. You know, you can never say thank you too much, of course, if it's not extreme, but in the beginning and at the end is always the right way to do it. Since this is a thank you note, it is a very appropriate place to do it. Example, at the end of this particular note, you could say, "Thanks again for the bike." Thanks again would be okay, but thanks again for the bike is more specific and a little bit more powerful in showing your appreciation. So you have in this part, "I plan on riding the bike around my neighbourhood every night after school. I look forward to seeing you soon, and thanks again for the bike." In the closing, of course, you would end it simply with your signature and sincerely. Just a note about thank you notes. If you received money and in your thank you note you don't want to mention the amount, you may want to write something along the lines of, "Thank you for your generosity. It is greatly appreciated." That's something you can do. Sometimes people don't like to write the amounts that they received in a thank you note, but just using the phrase, "Thank you for your generosity. It is greatly appreciated," that is perfectly acceptable and very, very polite and courteous indeed. So here we have a simple thank you note. And as you can see, we'll just take you through that one more time. The note is, "Hi Peter, thanks for the new bike you bought me for my birthday. It's just what I wanted. The colour red fits the bike well. It's my favourite colour." As you can see, that is in the centre and it is accentuated. So it is showing real, true appreciation that you got the right gift. Finally, "I plan on riding my bike around my neighbourhood every day, right after school. I look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks again for the bike. Sincerely," and then the signature. There it is in a nutshell. Now that wasn't too difficult to write, was it? No, of course not. But let's take a look at how a thank you note can be translated into a work situation or something that is pertaining to business. Here we are looking at a different format, and because it is a business format, from the training officer of one company to the events planner of a conference company, then here there is an exchange between people who have paid money for services and people who have provided a service to the other party. So we are then going to start off by looking through this sample. We see that it follows the format flush to the left, and this is addressed to Miss Baker, the Senior Events Planner of Conference Experts. It starts like this with the correct salutation. Dear Miss Baker, thank you very much for the wonderful holiday that your company was able to arrange this past month. Our senior executives had a wonderful time and the seminar facilities were top class. So here, first up is the thank you and explaining why the appreciation is there. What happened to make this particular executive of this company want to write this letter? The second part talks a little bit further. The hotel took care of all the details and the functions really ran to their correct times. This is what is really appreciated, for example, by this particular writer. Because they were on business as well, they needed to follow time schedules. So it says, we were all happy with the results, and we will certainly be going to your choice of conference resorts again next year. So this is a very positive note, a very appreciative note of the endeavours and the efforts of Miss Baker, who provided this service. In the final closing paragraph, it says, please continue to send me your brochures, and I look forward to seeing you in a couple of months to start planning for next year. So this is a very positive thing for Miss Baker. She has been exceptional in the way she's provided a service, and therefore this company is really showing their gratitude through this letter and the idea of doing future business with her. It signs off by saying thank you again for such a successful event. Sincerely. And of course, being a business thank you letter, it is friendly in nature, but it is also business-like, and David Jones signs off with his position there, etc. So here we see how you can adapt friendly letters, thank you notes for a friendly situation, and also thank you notes for a business-like situation as well. So long as you follow guidelines, you can write very effective letters and come out looking the professional, looking the top business person that you try to appear to your customers. Indeed, in this letter, David Jones, as the training officer, is appearing very professional to Miss Baker. And indeed, this is a very positive letter because there means there's also future business. There is the difference when you do start to personalize your thank yous, when you do write to people. Even to say a simple thank you, that adds impact. That adds power to your ability to communicate. Writing is a very powerful way to communicate. So remember this general rule. Instead of just saying thank you, in the next few activities that you attend or events you attend for your organization, why don't you try writing a personalized thank you letter to the company or the provider who invited you? And I guarantee that they will start to think of you in a different way. They will think of you in a much more elevated way because of your professional style and your professional manner. Now we're going to move on to some other kinds of letters. In this next session or section here, we have writing a condolence letter. This can be one of the most difficult tasks that you might ever have to do. And also don't forget, condolences are written in personal lives as well as they are from the point of view of a company, from executives in a company who may have unfortunately lost one of their staff members, key members of their staff, for example. For example, recently the Air France crash. In that particular tragedy, many staff were lost as well. Their lives were lost. And therefore you would find that the company would also send letters of condolence to the particular staff members, to the families of the staff members, And so you can see that writing in this sort of way is also something that you may at some time need to be able to complete. So writing a letter of condolence is a difficult task, as I did mention. And we never really know what to say. That's what makes it so difficult. We never really know how much detail to go into and just what to say and what words to use. What you say depends on, of course, how close you were to the deceased and or the recipient of the letter. It could be the mother of someone who passed away, for example. So how close were you? That will help you know exactly what kinds of things you say. So definitely a condolence letter should be written in a friendly format. When I'm talking about friendly here, it doesn't mean friendly, happy, laughing, joking format. Friendly means more casual, not so formal and soft. So unless you are a close friend or a relative, start the letter simply by introducing yourself. Say who you are and why you're writing this letter. In the next paragraph, you would offer your sympathy. And in the third and final paragraph, this is the place where you might offer assistance to the particular person or the person that you're writing to, and try to say something that genuinely helps them work through this grief or this sad moment in their lives. So you keep it simple. You introduce yourself, you offer sympathy, and then you offer assistance that you might genuinely try to help them with something or another. Sometimes what you don't say is almost more important than what you do say, meaning that the words you choose and the way you say things is very, very powerful. Even if you say something very briefly but very beautifully, that has great emphasis and that has great power and presence. Even though you might only write a few lines, you will show the family or those people that you are writing to your complete and full support. So that is an important thing. Just some brief tips and notes to remember here. Keep these condolence letters short. Do remember at these particular times there may be lots of letters coming in and cards and things for people to read. So don't make it too long so that adds to the task of having to read through all of these things. So first point, keep the condolence letter short. The next thing you can do, point number 2, is really never say how they feel, that you know how they feel. Really, you don't know how they feel. You can get an understanding of how they may be feeling, but you really don't know the depths of how they are actually feeling. You may have had some situation similar in your own lives. But grief is a very intimate thing. It's a very personal thing. And the feelings that come with that are very unique to each individual. So try not to make an intrusion there to that person. That's a very important don't to do with condolence letters. And point number 3. Do share, though, some fond memory, some sweet memory of the person who has departed in the second paragraph of your letter. If indeed you can do that, then make it very short but very sweet and very fond, so that can show your emotions and your concern for the person at the time of writing your condolence letter. So these are some tips and notes to remember. We will take you through, or I will take you through this letter as a sample. And therefore you can see how things come out. It looks lengthy in the second paragraph, but it is a personal condolence letter, and depending on the relationship you have with that other person or the recipient, then that is how you will judge what volume you put to your particular paragraphs. This is written to Dear Mrs. Johnson. Although we have never met, your son Stephen and I became close friends in boot camp and have corresponded regularly over the past 4 years. Here we know that this is from someone who has never met the mother of their friend. So it explains it very clearly in a soft way how the relationship came about between Mrs. Johnson's son and this writer. I was dismayed to hear of his passing and am writing to extend my deepest sympathies to you and your family. Now, these are very lovely words. These are very conventional words used in condolence letter writing. So they are polite, they are courteous, and they are caring. So in the first paragraph, this introduction is very clear to the recipient, Mrs. Johnson, as how the relationship came about and exactly who the writer is. Stephen was always full of energy and optimism, and here, this is where this person is writing something very fond, very nice, very meaningful about Stephen. During training, Stephen helped me overcome my fear of climbing and rappelling. When the exercises became too tough, it was Stephen who always encouraged the squad to soldier on. So here, this person is writing about Stephen's good points and the strengths which people admired him for. You must be very proud of him. It was no surprise that he made sergeant before the end of his first hitch. Stephen once told me it was you who taught him that the best part of life is building good memories. So here we can see that the writer has put something very fond and sweet attached to the good points about Stephen in the body of this condolence letter. This is to make the reader feel perhaps a little bit more contented that her son did know a very nice person and that there was a good relationship going on here and that he was really valued by everybody and appreciated. In the final closing of the condolence letter, it goes on to say, I hope that the memories you build will help you to soldier on through this difficult time. So we gather that Stephen was a soldier. And in the closing, the writer has, in a friendly way and a very nice way, used the fact that he was a soldier in the terminology and the choice of words. So the writer hopes that Mrs. Johnson will be able to get through this difficult time. And in signing off, instead of just sincerely, in condolence letter writing, we use something a little bit more deeper than that, a little bit deeper. We would say, with warmest regards, and then sign off. Hopefully you will not, as I said, have to write one of these letters. But indeed, if you do have to, either to an international partner. It could be you're doing business internationally, and there may be something that happens that you do wish to write a letter of condolence to your colleagues in your overseas affiliates. Then you may use these guidelines to follow, because they will result in a very polished and a very courteous and correct way of writing a condolence letter. We have now finished with our letters, and we're just going to take a look at addressing the envelope. Remember envelopes? Don't forget that people who write letters, or indeed companies who write letters, all send them out in envelopes as well. So that's also an important part of the letter writing process. Addressing an envelope should be fairly simple, however. And you use the upper left-hand corner where you put your name, and underneath that should be your return address. This is just in case something goes wrong and the post office knows where to send your letter back in case it goes astray. You do want to get your letters back, otherwise you don't know where they've gone. And if post offices are very efficient, then they definitely will send it back to you. Sometimes people do put this on the back of the envelope where they have covered over that triangular piece of the envelope to the main body, and that's where they write their name and return address. But usually in a business situation, we will put it on the front, on the left-hand upper corner. Then we move to the upper right-hand corner, and normally in all countries around the world, this is where the stamp goes. In the center should be the recipient's name and the recipient's address. So this is quite simple to follow. Do make sure though, when you send out envelopes, if you're sending a personal note or a thank you note or a friendly letter, make sure that your envelope is just as tidy and as neat and checked for spelling and font size, etc., as the body of your letter. We can also get a very good impression or a bad impression from the envelopes and the way they are addressed. So your recipient will look at the name on the front, how it's printed. If it's written all over the place, if it's got spelling mistakes in it, then it shows that not enough care has really been taken as well. So helpful tips to writing your envelope. Print all the information on the envelope before you are putting the information in it and sealing it. So printing on a flatter surface makes the printing easier. Then you won't be inclined to pierce the paper perhaps with your pen, or have uneven areas on which to write the name and the address, etc. So that's a good tip to actually follow. Address the envelopes first, then put your information in them. If you are sending your letter off to another country, make sure you put it on the last line of your return address and the recipient's address as well. So don't just put your city. Always put your country as well, particularly if you are writing to somebody in another country. If something goes wrong, then that other country's post office knows the country to return your letter to. Makes sense, doesn't it? But sometimes we do forget that. So make it a rule to include your country in the address on your envelopes. As I said before, if you're writing a friendly letter, then you can write your return address on the flap of the envelope at the back, if there's no room at the top left-hand corner. So these are just some simple guidelines. And do remember, envelopes are just as important in creating that very first impression, particularly if that envelope arrives at the actual desk of the head of customer service or the director of human resources or the CEO himself. Sometimes mail is not opened in the system of things in offices. People have different procedures, and when it's opened at the direct level that you are writing to, it can have either a positive or a very negative effect. Sometimes people keep the envelopes as well. They staple the letter to the envelope so they can keep all the pertinent information about that particular mailing. So if your letter really looks great and looks professional, and your envelope as well certainly matches the part, then that is adding that level of professionalism to your image. Let's have a look finally at fax cover sheets and information on fax cover sheets. You can send faxes without a cover sheet. You can do that, and people do it all the time. It's very quick. It doesn't take time to send that fax off. But remember, if you include a cover sheet with your fax, it will ensure that the receiver knows the documents are from you. They know who the documents are from and who the fax is addressed to, as well as the other pertinent information. Fax cover sheets are very important because they ensure that things do not go astray. And one thing to remember, it really looks professional if you do send a cover sheet of sorts. The cover sheet, of course, as is normal, should be the first sheet sent with the fax. How do we make a fax cover sheet? Well, you can easily make your own. In a word processing program, there are plenty of options available for you. But do remember that the most important things to include in the fax cover sheet is who the fax is addressed to by using attention, who the fax is from, the sender's fax number, and the number of pages in the fax. These are the simple elements of the fax cover sheet. Other information that would make the fax cover sheet more helpful are a heading perhaps with the sender's company name, if you're sending to a company, the phone number, address, date of the sender's phone number as well, the subject and the receiver's company, and any comments or messages. So these are some standard pieces of information that you can put together from a word processing program. Maybe you have them already in existence in your company. But if you don't, then really do try to make an effort to prepare fax cover sheets. They look professional. They are expected really from major companies. It means that the fax itself, the pertinent information may not go astray. So you are ensuring and putting in your communication a level of professionalism. If you decide, and there's one point to remember here, if you do decide to put a logo, make sure that it shows up properly when sending the fax in black and white. Sometimes a lot of colors and things in a logo don't print out clearly at the other end, and a lot of fax machines are only capable of receiving black and white. If the other machine is color, that's fine, but most often fax machines receive in black and white. So these are points to remember. Here we have some examples of some fax cover sheets. You may like to look at these in more detail and choose a style that is preferable to your liking, one that you feel is easier to read and holds all the information very clearly. Normally, if you're sending something personally, you don't use a fax cover sheet. But in every other instance, I would say that you should prepare one. As I said, it brings out your level of professionalism. It really shows that you are thinking about the person at the other end, and you're really making an effort to communicate in a proper and correct way. Here we come to the end of our business writing program, our business letter program. And I do hope that throughout the stages and the sessions in this part of the program, you are able to understand clearly more about business letter writing, how to follow the guidelines, how to use them so you can be a better writer and be, of course, a better communicator to all your customers and to your business colleagues and your business partners. And also we have in there some ways of approaching personal issues as well. Please do apply them. They are very valuable pieces of information, and do start to apply them. When you do that, you will see just how easy it is to improve your capabilities and your skills in this particular area. Thank you once again for your kind attention, and I do look forward to seeing you in one of our next programs.